This is Lee from the Law School Toolbox and the Bar Exam Toolbox. Wonder why people fail the bar exam? One of our tutors, Hoang, is here to share his thoughts. Okay, Hoang, thanks so much for joining me today to talk about why you think people fail the bar.
Yes, such a great topic.
I know, right?
Love this one. I talk a lot about this one with my students.
Exactly. We are the people who talk about this stuff all the time.
Yeah.
All right. So why do you think most people end up failing the bar?
Yeah. So, I usually boil it down to two things. One of them being mental barriers, which, I don't know that we or even our students appreciate enough. And then the other being not enough time practicing with purpose. And so I say practice with purpose because I think there's a very intentional reason behind what we do when we practice, why we practice, how we practice. And so there's a lot I'm going to just talk about there, just or at least something briefly. But with the mental barriers, I think a lot of students, I think especially if you're retaking the bar, I think there are a lot of things that we think about. Our society is filled with messages and ideas about what we can or what we can't do, how hard it is. Like, I'll never forget, I was getting ready to take the bar, and like my mother-in-law's friend, just like a random pass, we're like meeting, everyone's chatting. I was like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm getting ready to start for the bar exam." She's like, "That's a really hard test. My son failed it a number of times." And I was like, "Oh, well, I hope I pass." But it's like the messaging I think is around the bar exam is such that when you get into it, of course, you want to be able to develop the skills, but at the same time, society is always telling you how hard it is. Your friends are telling you how hard it is. Random people will tell you how hard it is. People will kind of create this aura around it that it's like, you'll fail, or like it's likely that you're not going to be able to pass. And so I think mentally going into it, the other thing I'll never forget is one of my attorney mentors who I'd worked with um, uh, during law school. She had told me one of the best pieces of advice that she gave me was actually, don't forget that half of the bar exam and half the bar study is a mental game. And you need to make sure that, you're thinking about how you're mentally going to prepare yourself to do well, not just like your skill set and, your technical skills that you need to be able to pass the bar exam. And so in law school, I actually developed a meditation practice because of this, because I knew not just the bar exam, but in law school, just to be able to do well on the law school exams, I had to know how to keep myself calm during a test. If I saw something I didn't know, remembering to breathe, just so I can remind myself what I did know. And oftentimes, the barriers with the bar exam is that you're in this moment, you're gonna see stuff you might not know, and oftentimes, what happens is if you haven't practiced your mental game, you might panic, and when you panic, you then are losing all the skills that you forget about all the skills that you just spent the last 10 weeks practicing, and then you kind of blank. And oftentimes, when students talk to me about what happened on the bar exam, they tell me about these moments where they just like blank. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to complete this problem. And so I think, you know, a big part of why I think students do fail the bar is not mentally preparing, and it can mean a number of different things for different students, right? But a very simple thing I usually tell students about is just develop a meditation practice, because when you're meditating, you're really pushing yourself to be in the moment with the thing that you're doing and focusing on that, and not allowing intrusive thoughts to kind of get into your brain about like, oh my gosh, like like, what if I can't do this? Or what if I
Mhm.
fail? What if I fail again? And I think a lot of those things oftentimes if they do get to you, it just restricts you from actually being able to perform at your very best. And I always tell students, if you've done the practice, usually if you're able to perform at your very best, you're probably gonna pass the bar exam. But if you're not able to perform at your best and if you're not able to show what you've been able to do in practice, then that ends up leading to, like, missed MBE questions that you should have gotten right, that you look back on and you're like, "Oh, I should have got that right." Essays where, like, you're done with them, day 1, you're thinking back about, and you're like, "I knew that." And it's like, it's that "I knew that" feeling that I think the mental barriers end up going up, is that, like, when you know something, but you can't perform in the moment until, like, afterwards, and you're thinking back about it, and you're like, "Oh, yeah, it was this. I should have known that." So the mental barriers is one thing. The other thing I'll say is, the practicing with purpose point. So with this, I meet some students who don't really have a plan for how they're going to practice, other than I'm gonna do whatever. Like, I'm gonna do whatever. I'm gonna just like do as many MBE questions as I can. I'm gonna do as many essay questions that I can. And to some degree, it's like, great, you're doing something. But when I talk about purpose, it's like, why are you doing that type of practice? Why are you doing that essay? Why are you doing those MBEs? Like, why are you doing a mixed set of 20? Why are you not doing, a set of just contracts, 15 contracts questions, right? So I think that being able to kind of focus in on what your purpose is for the practice that you're doing allows you to then tailor the practice for what you're actually needing to do well on the bar exam, and not just like blindly going in and saying, I'm just going to do as many questions as I can across the board, and then, get done with who knows how many questions, but not really having rounded out any of your weaknesses. Right. And so, um, practicing with purpose, I think, is just a key point because of that reason. And so when students, I think, they get to the bar exam, they've done a bunch of practice, but they really didn't have any, like idea around why they were doing what they were doing or what they were doing. Even the reviewing process, they didn't take much time to review their work. That then leads to a situation where you might be on the bar exam, and again, you see a question, right? And it's a weak area of yours, but you didn't really hone in on that area enough to like build it up to round out the rest of your, like what the rest of your score could be. And so then you miss that, and then you miss it again on the MBEs, or you miss on the essay, whatever it is. And that then creates a situation where, you're not able to pick up those points to be able to pass the bar exam. And it could be a very few number of points that would have helped you pass. It could have been like a greater number of points. But I think the idea is that you really want to be intentional about what you're doing during your practice time, and just not blindly going into just saying like, I'm just going to do like as many of these questions as I can. Or the worst thing is like, I'm not going to practice like any of these questions. I'm just going to like do all these, and that's going to be great because I know how to do that. And it makes me feel good. And it's like, bar prep is really not about making you feel good. It should be about breaking you down, and really then building you back up during the latter half of bar. Anyways,
Yeah.
that's how I would.
Yeah. I think that's great. I mean, I think it's so interesting when I started doing this work and I started reading more about what happens in an exam room. And when you hear students over and over again say like, oh, my mind just went blank. It really struck me when I read about the science, and I'm like, oh, because you literally, your body deprives your brain of oxygen, and you like, you can't, your body's like thinks you're running from the lion and like can't, it can't think.
Yeah.
And it's not like your fault. We are genetically developed to have that response. And so whether it's a meditation practice or something you do in the moment to like take deep breaths to like get your nervous system back online, you do have to practice these things so you can call on them. If you do find out that your body's decided you're being chased by a lion in the exam room, you have to get oxygen back to your brain. I mean, it's really fascinating. And I think we have lost some of these coping mechanisms. I was talking to my son who was on his way somewhere, and he was walking and he got lost. I mean, not really lost. He was like 2 blocks away, but he got lost. But he said to me, he's like, well, I kind of started to panic. So I sat on a bench until I was calm enough to decide what to do next. And I'm like, that's brilliant. As adults, we seldom think that way.
Yeah. We're still running around trying to figure out what to do.
Right. We're still like running around being lost. And I was like, it's so simple that sometimes I feel like children are better at saying like, I can't think clearly. I should take a beat and get my act together so I can, make good decisions. And then he backtracked 2 blocks and was fine. But I do think that, just these simple things, they sound so simple and they sound not to be related to bar prep. And I think that, it's just foolish not to think that this has such a big impact on how you perform.
And I think it's like for students too, it's unavoidable. Some of these thoughts that students have, it's unavoidable. I mean, even for first time takers, it's unavoidable. It's like, what if I don't pass first time? Then I have to
felt that,
right? And so it's like all these questions that we're asking ourselves about what we're capable of doing, and it's like, then you're like, some students, I'm like, you can do this. Like, senior work, you can do this. Why are you like projecting? What's the word I'm looking for? What's the opposite of confidence?
That was it. You're just if you don't, you lack confidence. That's not a very good word.
No, I mean it's like
wordsmith for a living. I was like, well, I don't know.
No, I mean it's like that's essentially what it is. It's like, there's a word for this. I don't know why I don't know this right now.
We'll think of it right after we finish this.
I know, right? But it's like this idea that like you allow all of these thoughts about what you're capable of doing or not capable of doing enter your stream of thinking, so that
Right.
that locks the very real skills that you have to perform
Yeah.
well, right? Very like your legal analytical skills, like you've gotten to a point where you've honed those so well that like you can look at an essay. If you weren't in a testing environment, you'd nail that essay, right? And then like you put yourself in a testing environment, and for whatever reason, right, you start thinking about like, what if I don't know this? What if I'm not sure about it? Like, what if I can't do this? And then like you, what tends to happen is like you talk yourself back up to say, I can do this. But then as soon as like you hit a road bump, like a road bump, that's when those thoughts come back in. It's like, oh my gosh, like,
Oh, yeah.
what if like I miss this? I don't know what this is. Like, oh my gosh, like I'm freaking out now. It's like it's question, it's essay 3. I have 3 more to go. And like I don't know, like I don't know if I'm gonna be able to finish this one. And I think it's like in those moments, it's like like how do you calm yourself down? How do you remind yourself about what you did do during practice? A very like tangible thing, right? You can say, like, I spent X amount of hours, I did this number of questions, I can do this, and then refocus yourself to apply the skills that you have to the task at hand, and remove all those crazy thoughts out of your mind, and then throw your mind back into the task, and then be able to complete it. And know that, like, the other thing is knowing that no one essay is gonna make or break your score. No set of MBs is gonna make or break your score. And so that if you don't do as well on question 3, know that you have question 4, question 5, the
Hmm.
and a full day of MBEs to do well. And so there's never a point where it's over, right? And it's never a
Yeah.
point you can continue to apply yourself. But
Yeah. When I took
uh,
the bar, it was 3 days in California. And on the
you're
MBE
part of
day,
you're a part of the OG group
I'm a part of the OG
that
group.
that really was tested.
That really, like, that ages me. But when on the middle of the multiple choice day, I just had a rough morning with those multiple choice questions. And so I was staying at the hotel and I went back to the hotel room and I text my now husband, who is not a lawyer. And I said, I think I just failed. Because after the writing day, I'm a decent writer. I was like, I
Oh,
think I did okay. And so, of course, he calls me and is like, what happened? And I was like, it was bad. And he's like, what do you mean it was bad? I was like, it was really hard. I don't think I did a very good job. And then I said, what are we going to do if I fail? And
mm.
he goes, well, we'll take a trip. He is a photographer. He goes, we'll take a trip and you can be my photo assistant. And I was like, sounds great. And for some reason, that was like enough for my nervous system. Like to have a plan if I got fired from my big firm job because I
Yeah.
failed, I could go on this trip and be a photo assistant. And then that calmed me down. And I went right back and did the afternoon. And luckily
And
I didn't have to
this
get
is
fired
really
from
what
my
I
big
mean by,
firm
like,
job.
anything that works, right? If you
Anything.
call someone and you have someone, just
I know.
let them know, like, "I'm gonna call you if I need to talk to you, and you can
Right.
remind me of either what I know or what I need to do or what we can do if I don't become a a lawyer in the future."
Exactly. I was like, I just needed somebody to tell me there was a plan if this all went sideways. And
Yes.
that plan, which was not a very good one, was enough for me to move on
That's so
forward.
good.
So
Yeah.
I know, because he was just like, I just need you to pass so we never have to live through this again. It's just like, that's enough. All right. So we've talked about the importance of being kind of mentally ready to have these coping mechanisms like meditation in place. We've talked about the importance of practice and really deliberate practice. So if you're retaking the bar, what's kind of the first thing that you think somebody should consider?
Yeah, so this is a really hard one because I recognize that many students who retake the bar have financial obligations, and so you have work, right? You have a job typically that you're. I mean, everyone is in a place where I think, um, typically you're doing something to have some kind of income. And so the challenge is how much time do you actually have to study? And you're like balancing all kinds of other things, right? It's not just the time to study, it's also the going back to the mental side, it's like, am I good enough? Can I do this? Everyone else is now like have done their swearing in ceremony. Like I didn't go to that at my school. And so it's all these thoughts that kind of come back at you. So while you're considering all those things, I think the number one thing is probably how much time do you actually have to practice? Because if you don't have enough time to properly prepare, then there's a question as to whether or not, it's worth it to do that administration or to wait for another one, right?
Hmm.
Because it's like you don't want to waste your money like to just to sign up because it's like that's the next one. And you don't also want to waste your time because even if you don't have enough time to study, you are going to spend time studying.
Yeah.
It's like how it's like this balance of like, do you can you honestly assess for yourself, do I have enough time to study and do the amount of studying that I need to actually pass? And so I think that's the number one consideration because if you don't have enough time to study, it's going to be really, really hard. And you obviously have a set of knowledge and skills already from studying the first time, but I do think there's a learning, like a relearning process that has to happen because oftentimes it's like, if we're talking about the California bar, you're talking about like the last time you studied probably being the third week of July, and then like the next time you start probably being like December, maybe at the earliest after bar results come out because no one's gonna. Well, some people study over Thanksgiving, but so it's like there's this amount of time where you just lose all this information, and so you will have to relearn it. And so then I always consider the fact that like you know for you to retake the bar, you need to make sure you have enough time to actually dedicate to the amount of studying that you need to do. So
Yeah.
that's the number one thing I
So,
think about.
so important. You got to be honest.
Yeah,
Honesty is better. Even if the honest answer is like 5 hours a week, then you talk about what you're going to do with that. You
yeah.
need to be
And
honest.
for students who are like, I'm gonna take it February regardless, I'm like, great, we'll work with you. We'll figure out,
Right.
if it is like I have 3 hours a day. Okay, cool. Like, let's figure out a way to help you. If you know you want to take February, let's figure out a way to help you do 3 hours a day. I'm gonna like always tell students on the front end, if you have more time, if you can figure out a way to create more time throughout your week, these are the things that you should do. But I always work with students to make sure they know that regardless of what you decide, we will support you. Um,
Yeah.
uh, but always, it's like having more time to dedicate is going to be a bit better than having less time, just because there's so much to cover. And you want to make sure that the second time you take it, right, is going to be the last time you take it. And
Yeah.
being able to do that really means that you really have to have that time dedicated to studying and, practicing again with purpose deliberately, doing the things that are going to round out your weaknesses and then making you see enough of the problems to know, you covered your bases before you take the bar exam. So
Yeah. Once we helped someone prepare for the bar exam in 10 days, which is not
I've
something
heard
I would
about this.
recommend. Yes, everybody's heard about this. But I will say that I appreciate the honesty. This person came to us and just said, "This is what I got," you
Yeah.
know? And so we just worked with it. And that was much better than just not being honest with us. And
Yeah.
we ended up passing. And I think the
That's right.
honesty was part of the reason why he passed.
Yeah.
So,
Like,
yeah.
I think that's so important. It's like being honest with how much time you have, and then that honesty would then, I think, for the student, it then gives them some expectation as to what do I actually need to do, right? Like, 'cause
Mhm.
then I know I'm working 8 hours a day, full time job, whatever it is, right? So that means how many hours do I actually have, and then how do I like decide what is like going to be my morning routine before I go to work? What is going to be my evening routine when I get home? What am I going to be doing during my weekends? No one thinks bar prep is fun, right? So it's like, but
No.
it's something you have to do to pass the bar exam. So no one's going to be enjoying it. But, if you create that time for yourself, excuse me, and you're able to be honest with yourself about how much time you have, then you can decide like strategically for those hours that I do have each day, what am I going to be doing? Like, what essay am I going to be
Yeah.
writing? How many MBEs am I going to do? And what types of MBEs am I going to do? Right? All these specific questions that, again, I go back to this practice purpose idea because I think students need to be very clear about what the hours of the day are going to be spent, like they're going to spend doing. Like, what is your hour? What is your like 8 to 10 block? If you have an 8 to 10 block blocked out in the morning for bar study, what are you doing during that block? Have you planned that
Yeah.
out? Decide like what it is that time is going to like, help you with. So, yeah, I think the honesty is super important.
Yeah. All right. And what is the one thing you find yourself saying over and over to your students?
It's not even a surprise.
I think I
Practice,
might be able to guess.
practice, practice,
Practice. Yep.
practice. Every problem they come to me with, I'm just like, hey, have you practiced?
I know.
Like,
So true.
like, how much practice have you done? Did you review your essay? And I don't know. It's just something about this, and I always come back to just because I truly believe that. I mean, obviously, you need to know how to practice, but it is reps. Like it's just like we're talking about the Olympics. It's an Olympian. in order to perform well, right? And there's so many sports analogies with bar prep. And it's, to me, a very physical activity, which I don't think most people understand. Like, obviously sitting down doesn't seem like a physical activity, but people sometimes sweat.
It's exhausting. Yeah.
See. So, but it is one of those things where the amount of times that you've repeated the thing that you're going to be asked to perform on a certain day is going to dictate how well you do on that performance, right? Like, if you haven't really practiced at all, like, say if you're a sprinter and like you've only like and you're really good naturally, right? But like you've only like practiced so many times before a race, you're not going to be performing at your very best, and you're certainly likely not going to win your heat against whoever else who may have practiced way more. And so the idea is that you want enough repetitions doing what you're going to be expected to do on bar exam day, so that when you get to bar exam day, it's like a walk in the park. You're just like, oh, I'm just like, I've been doing this for 10 weeks, 8 to 10 hours a day, 6 to 7 days a week. Like, this should I should be able to walk in.
I got this.
And it should build confidence in you. Like, I've done this so many times that I can go in now and know that, like, whatever I see, because I've seen basically everything, and the bar examiners are not very creative. So I've basically seen everything they can throw at me. There might be like one weird thing that I'm kind of unclear about, but I would be willing to bet that like 90% of everything else I'm gonna probably know, right? And so that's why I say practice, practice, practice so many times, is because it oftentimes is the key to being able to unlock like your knowledge and skills around all this work. And going back to my other point, right? It's not just like random practice. It has to be really intentional, right? You have to know that it's not just writing a bunch of essays. You have to review the essays. You have to know what you got wrong. You have to understand what you did well. You have to like be able to like shift your legal analysis structure if you're seeing like you're missing a part of IRAC, right? Or you're not really using the facts to help you answer whatever it is, right? But that's a whole part of practice. So practice isn't just like getting problems done. It's also reviewing and understanding what you did well and what you didn't do well. And then maybe even rewriting your answer if like you completely bombed that essay, right? But that type of work is really what will move you across the finish line to be able to pass the bar exam, is the amount of time you actually spend repeating the process that you're going to be expected to perform on bar exam day. And so for the students who I know, like, just do really like hammer out their practice, do it intentionally, like really round out their weaknesses, they walk into bar exam day confident about what they're capable of doing. They go through the day. I mean, when I talk to them afterwards, they're like, I felt good about most of everything. There's a couple of things I didn't know, but like I felt like I had done this before. And I think that's what you want to be able to tell yourself, is like, I've done this before. Like, I've seen this before.
Yeah.
And it might be a different fact pattern. It might be like, they might ask you the question in a different way, but you've done it before. You've seen it somewhere before. You've analyzed it in this way before. You just have to kind of tap back into what you've practiced and then perform it on the exam day. So I like, if you're in any of my one-on-one tutoring meetings, you'll hear practice athlete. That's
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks. Oh, yes.
Sorry. I want to add this one because there's one other thing I say all the time if you talk to a student, I always say, you got this, because I do think it's an affirming validation for the students who are entering this both study and also bar exam, is like knowing that at the end of the day, you put in all this work, you put in this time, you put in the effort, you can do it. And just to remind yourself, like, even if you're in the moment and you're like having you have like a mental break that you need to like get over, just telling yourself, I can do this, can often be what will get you over the hump. So
amazing. Well, thanks for the perspective and for joining us.
Of course. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this video, please take a second to give us a like and leave a comment. And be sure to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any future content. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us via our website contact form at barexamtoolbox.com. Thanks for watching.